Once more, many a long time back, I worked at an inn. When I began, I was working at the front work area amid overnight hours. The lodging was a lovely normal measure, possibly a small bit expansive. We do not have any eateries or bars associated or anything like that, but have parts of rooms. I would sit behind the front work area, and most of the time, overnights, nothing happened. Here and there, people would come or go, but most individuals didn't talk to conversation to me. This made my job truly simple, and I didn't intellect being up all night. The event that I'm attending to tell you almost happened at fair after 2:00 within the morning one night. I was working behind the front desk, and I confronted the campaign in lifts. To my cleared out, there was a relax area and a corridor that driven to rooms on the first floor. Everything was exceptionally calm until a man entered the inn. He strolled interior and went right past me. I expected that he was remaining at the lodging and was just returning to his room. The fellow was lovely normal height, light brown hair, mid-30s. He strolled down the hallway and was gone. Almost 5 minutes afterward, in spite of the fact that he strolled by once more, this time getting to the other corridor, I still didn't think anything of it, but I before long saw him another time. He was once more strolling past from one hallway to another. It was sort of behind me, but still in plain locate. It seemed a small bit odd, but there was nothing off base with it. But a few minutes afterward, I went to go get some water. There was an allocator in the lounge, and you had to walk past the passage to induce there. As I was passing by, I taken note some person within the corridor a ways down. I looked and taken note that it was the same fellow. He was standing exterior of an entryway, and it showed up as in spite of the fact that he couldn't get inside, but was attempting to. I thought maybe he was bolted out of his room, or possibly he was attempting to get into someone else's. I started to walk over to him, and was going to ask him in the event that he needed help with something. When I got a couple of steps closer to him, he stopped and looked at me. Sometime recently I could say anything. The fellow turned, and after that strolled absent within the other heading. At that point, he vanished around a corner. It was truly suspicious. I begun to figure that the fellow likely didn't indeed have a room here. I went back to my front work area and decided to see at the security screens. We had cameras in each single hallway. Unfortunately, the video quality was truly very terrible. Any details were difficult to make out. I looked around until I spotted the fellow on one of the cameras. He strolled past it down a corridor. At that point, he went to an entryway and showed up to attempt to open it. It looked like conceivably he was thumping on the entryway at that point or something. He was standing at it for a whereas. At that point he paced around a small some time recently returning to the door. This was as well suspicious, and I decided to go inquire him what was going on. I got up and strolled over to where the fellow was. The passages could get a small bit complicated on the primary floor. The second and third floors were very basic, but the to begin with floor had more hallways. I strolled to the one that the man was at. When I reached the starting of the hallway, I saw him. He was a ways down, likely nearly 100 feet. Nearly as before, long as I was inside locate of him, he looked over to me. I inquired him what he was doing. The guy fair begun sprinting towards me at that point. He showed up to be running as fast as he conceivably might. This wasn't what I was anticipating, and I moved back and began heading towards the front. The guy was still running and rapidly drawing nearer me. By the time I got back to the campaign, he was a lot closer. I might hear him running. I chosen to run out of the inn and see on the off chance that the man would follow. After I made it exterior, I realized that he did, in reality, take after me out, and he was too a lot closer than I expected, presently as it were almost 40 feet absent-likely. I didn't think that I would be able to urge to my car on time if he was chasing me, so I ran across the street. Across the road and a small ways down was a 24-hour gas station, so I ran all the way there. When I got there, I went inside. The fellow hadn't crossed the road and remained within the hotel stopping part. I think he went back within the hotel after that, but I called the police. I detailed a suspicious man attempting to enter hotel rooms and chasing me when I got up against him. The police were very fast to reply and got there as it were like a diminutive afterward. They entered the hotel, which the man was still interior of. He attempted running away, but was caught and removed from the inn. He wouldn't say what he was doing there, or why he was attempting to induce interior of rooms. After that, I talked with the police for a while, and at that point returned to work. I was truly creeped out by the complete circumstance, but grateful to be all right. That was an involvement that made me want to halt working overnights, and I did without further ado after. A number of a long time back, I was working as an overnight security protect at a company. I do not keep in mind precisely what company it was, but it wasn't that well known or anything. I worked at a parcel of distinctive places back at that point doing security. It was a simple work, since I would fair sit at a work area all night. Truly nothing ever happened. Most shifts, I wouldn't indeed conversation to anybody, sometimes one or two at most. I may fair go on my phone and see around and get paid for it. But at this one specific company, it was a lovely standard office building for the foremost portion. Presently interior was a campaign, and I would sit at a work area in there, and had a computer with a few fundamental data. The building was not truly close anything else in specific, and was marginally more disengaged. The as it were other individuals there overnight were a security watch and a janitor. The other security watch would generally fair be outside, and I knew both him and the janitor and didn't see them exceptionally much other than when I would arrive or take off, or when the janitor cleaned the campaign. When I was working behind the work area one night, I would figure that it was around 1 o'clock within the morning or so. As I sat behind the counter, I every so often would see around. My see was basically of the front door and the window another to it. Exterior of that was a stopping parcel, which was purge. Behind the stopping part was a fence. I was fair casually looking around when all of a sudden I saw this fellow walk to the entryway. He looked right interior and confronted me. It was truly unusual to see since no one had ever come to the entryway some time recently. But I then realized that this man who was standing at the entryway was grinning the creepiest grin I'd ever seen. His eyes were so wide, like they were approximately to pop out of their attachments. It was exceptionally unsettling. He had to be kidding or something. The man did not attempt to enter the building, in spite of the fact that he fair stood there at the entryway and kept staring at me. I wasn't beyond any doubt what to do, so I waved at him. He did not wave back to me. He at that point moved out of locate, and I couldn't see him anymore. I was truly befuddled by what had fair happened. I had no idea where the fellow had come from or what precisely he was doing. I attempted to brush it off and figured the exterior security protect would before long see the fellow, so I called him to let him know, but he hadn't seen the fellow at all. I got up and strolled over to the entryway, but the fellow was presently out of locate. I went back to my work area and was there for the following 30 minutes or so. At that point the fellow was back. I fair looked up, and there he was standing at the entryway and gazing at me once more with the same unpleasant grin. This time I got up, but as before, long as I stood up, he moved out of locate. I strolled over to the entryway and opened it up. The man was presently gone. He must have run. I utilised to work at a gas station a long time back. I was the receptionist within the comfort store that we had, and it was open 24 hours. So, as you'll figure, I worked overnights, and when I did, I would be all by myself. Presently, the gas station was found across the street from a few stores, such as Target and a number of others, so the region would get a part of activity amid the day. A throughway was too adjacent, and the gas station was on a corner. At night, in spite of the fact that all of the other businesses adjacent closed by 10, 00 or 11 o'clock, so things would be exceptionally calm until likely 6 o'clock a.m. or so. I worked nearly each night for a Eerie and was getting utilised to being there overnights. It was generally lovely calm, and the gas station would get cars here and there, whereas individuals once in a while came interior. Between the hours of midnight and 5 o'clock a.m., the normal sum of individuals that came interior was likely around 4 or 5, so generally 1 per hour. One night, I was working, and it was an ordinary calm night. By presently, it was almost 2 o'clock within the morning. I was behind the counter, and no one else was interior. No cars were at any of the gas pumps either. At one point, I saw a car pulling in from the road. It was a white van, one of those normal creepy-looking ones that was kind of old as well. It gradually drove up and stopped in one of the spaces out front. I anticipated some person to induce out of the van and come interior, but instead, the van fare sat there for a Eerie. I didn't truly have anything superior to do other than to observe it, so I did. I couldn't tell who was driving, but before long I realised that they likely weren't progressing to come interior. After sitting there for possibly 20 minutes, the van inevitably sponsored out. I thought it might take off, but instead, it drove around to the side of the building. There were a number of more stopping spaces there, and it was presently out of my locate. I truly found this a small bit odd, and within the centre of the night, sort of unpleasant as well. I continuously attempted my best not to let anything panic me, in spite of the fact that, working overnights, after the van went to the side of the building, likely an hour or so went by. Presently it was well past 3 o'clock am, no one came interior the store, and in that hour, as it were, one car got gas. At that point, I take a note that someone was strolling on the walkway up towards the entrance. It showed up to be a man, and he had come from the side where the van had gone some time recently. Seemed this be the driver. He was wearing a huge dark winter coat, and the hood was up. He was looking down, so I couldn't truly see his confront at all. He made it to the entryways, and after that strolled interior. After entering, the man strolled to the proper and absent from me at the counter. After vanishing down an walkway, I centered my consideration back down to my phone. A few minutes went by. When I looked up once more, I take a note that the man was fair standing there approximately 40 feet away from me. He was confronting me and looking in my heading with an irate sea on his confront. His hands were in his pockets, and I was confounded as to what he was doing. After dazzling at me for like 10 seconds, he didn't move or see absent. I said howdy to him and inquired him on the off chance that I might offer assistance him with anything. He didn't reply me and fair kept standing there. At that point, I inquired him in case he was a firm. The man still didn't answer me. I was truly confounded and not beyond any doubt what to do. After standing there for a few more seconds, the man at that point turned and gradually strolled out. At that point, he strolled back down the walkway and returned to the side of the building. Less than a diminutive afterward, I saw the white van drive absent. I was truly happy that he was gone. The rest of my shift was beautiful calm. Eventually, a few more individuals came in, I was attempting to figure out what that fellow was doing, in spite of the fact that, for the rest of my move, his behaviour was truly interesting. I worked nearly each night back at that point, and likely 3 evenings afterward. I was working, and it was around 2:00 a.m. or so. Once more, I was by myself, and there were no clients. It was exceptionally calm. At that point, I saw a car pulling into the gas station, and I before long realised that it was an ancient white van, similar to the one from the other night. I recalled what had happened the other night, and I fair trusted that it was not the same fellow. I was already feeling creeped out. The van gradually drove around the gas pumps and over to the parking spaces out front. At that point, it turned and began to back into one of the spaces. After it stopped, the van sat there for a few minutes, but all of a sudden, I listened a car entryway open, and before long saw what showed up to be the same man strolling around it. He went to the very back of the van and opened it up. A brief time afterward, he developed holding something that looked like a crowbar. At that point, he closed the back entryways to his van and began gradually strolling to the entrance. He was wearing the same thing as the time earlier. I had an awful feeling as I observed him gradually walk into the entrance entryways. After getting interior, he at that point turned and began strolling towards the back of the store. Rapidly, he went out of my sight, and everything in the store got to be greatly calm. Around 5 minutes went by. At that point, all of a sudden, I heard a smashing sound. It appeared just like the man had hit something, likely with his crowbar. I listened another sound after that. It was like he was just whacking stuff. A few seconds into this, he seemed to move closer, and after that, I saw him show up in a path a ways absent. I got out from behind the counter and ran out of the store. They weren't paying me sufficient to remain in there and bargain with it. I ran all the way to my car and got interior of it. Then I called the police. I held up there with the doors bolted, observing the store. I was stopped behind the gas pump, so I was a better than average ways absent from the store. Likely approximately 3 or 4 minutes after I called the police, I saw the fellow taking off. He gradually strolled out and went back interior of his van. At that point, he drove off. Less than a diminutive after he cleared out, the police arrived. I told them that the man was gone, and we went interior the store to see that lots of things were off the racks. It was all messed up from the fellow whacking it with his crowbar. It was like he had gone on a rampage. We observed the full thing unfurl on reconnaissance tapes, and the fellow was fair whacking stuff. Then he calmly cleared out. It was the craziest thing that I had ever seen. After that incident, the police examined to undertake to see for the fellow. They too had a police officer at the store overnights for the following week or so. The fellow didn't come back, and I didn't work there for much longer either. I'm happy that I quit that work since ever since it happened, I was truly apprehensive working there at night. This happened back in 2003. I utilised to work at a Walgreens, and in the event that anyone doesn't know, it's a well-known drugstore store chain that moreover offers parcels of other things. The stores are not that huge ordinarily, and by and large never as well active either. Most of the time, there's a beautiful calm feeling interior. The store that I worked at utilised to be open 24 hours. I'm not beyond any doubt in the event that it still is, but I know that it was when I worked there. So more often than not, when I was working overnights, I would be all by myself for most of my move. There truly wasn't or ought to have anyone else there, since I seem handle everything, and we never got that numerous overnight clients. I was moreover able to walk to and from work, which was exceptionally pleasant. I had an apartment that was fair down the road, and 1 or 2 of squares over, so it would as it would take me almost 10 minutes. Ordinarily, I worked 10 o'clock p.m. to 6 o'clock a.m. And it wasn't that late, however, when I strolled to work, and wasn't as well early when I strolled back. One time, when I was working an overnight move, everything was going ordinary, and it was almost 1 o'clock a.m. I accept. I keep in mind that I listened the programmed entryways opening and looked over to see a lady entering the store. She showed up to be approximately 40, had dim brown hair, was possibly 5'2" or 5'3", and lovely lean. After entering, the lady looked in my heading and said howdy, and I said hello there back to her. She at that point strolled down one of the passageways, and I centered my consideration somewhere else. I was fair standing behind the counter at the checkouts. We as it were had 2 check paths, but most of the time as it were had one open. A few minutes went by, and I every so often saw the lady, but I wasn't observing her or anything. She fair appeared to be shopping regularly. But at one point, I was fair casually looking around, and I saw the lady standing like half behind an passageway. She was holding a little video camera, it showed up, and holding it in a way that it looked like she was shooting me or taking my picture. I looked at her, pondering what was going on. It was like she was kind of attempting to stow away it, as well since she was approximately midway darkened. I found this really interesting. After some of seconds of this, her camera went down abruptly, and she vanished behind the path. I thought that it was odd, but not the greatest bargain. Almost a diminutive afterward, the lady strolled up to the cleared out close the exits. She said great night to me as she strolled out without indeed buying anything. I said great night to her, but was a small bit weirded out by the entire encounter. But after she was gone, I rapidly overlooked almost it. I mean, yeah, it was interesting that she was shooting me or anything, but it's not the creepiest thing within the world. Hours went by, and a few more clients came in. All of them were beautiful, typical. When 6 o'clock a.m. arrived, I was off, and another associate was there. I cleared out Walgreens, and after that headed back to my loft by strolling along the walkway. It was still dull out, and things were exceptionally calm. Fair the intermittent car would pass me by on the street. As I was strolling back, in spite of the fact that one thing that was a little diverse was that I listened someone strolling ways behind me. There were strides, but a good distance absent. I was sort of inquisitive, but didn't see back until I crossed over one square. As I did, I looked over, and the same lady was strolling. I found this truly bizarre. After I crossed the road, I crossed another, and after that went along that walkway that would take me all the way back to my loft. I didn't think the woman would do the same, but she did. That's when I began to induce truly creeped out. Her entire identity fair appeared kind of puzzling, indeed when she had talked to me, saying howdy and bye. The lady proceeded to walk behind me, but was a long ways back. Before long I come to my apartment. I was truly happy to see that she hadn't seemed to pick up on me or anything. She was still around the same remove behind. Presently you had to use your key to enter the flat building, and after that I had a partitioned key for my unit. This made me feel superior. On the off chance that I seemed fair get interior, who knows why this woman was following me, but I knew that she didn't live here. I entered my building, and after that went up to my loft, which was on the moment floor. My loft was at the front side of the building, so I might see out onto the road where the lady had been strolling. After I got inside, I went to the window and looked. Out I saw the lady standing there on the walkway. She had her camera out once more, and was showing up to require a video of me at my window. This was fair truly strange. I ducked down to induce out of her locate. Presently she was fair taking a video of my loft window. What was the point of this? After a few minutes, I looked once more, and she was gone. I went on with my ordinary schedule after that. I would unwind after work and inevitably drop snoozing. Clearly, my hours of being alert were exceptionally distinctive than most individuals, with me having to work overnight hours. So I fell asleep that day likely at around 9 o'clock within the morning or so. When I woke up, I recollected that it was nearly 2 o'clock p.m. That was a small bit prior than I usually woke up. But at that point, I keep in mind hearing the sound of somebody attempting to open my flat entryway. I strolled over to the entryway and after that looked through the peephole. What I saw was a lady strolling absent. I fair scarcely saw her, but it was the same lady from some time recently. I was presently amazingly creeped out by this. After she cleared out, I didn't know what to do. I observed her take off the building and then walk absent down the walkway, or maybe rapidly. I truly do not know how she got in. Probably snuck in as someone else was clearing out, which is exceptionally conceivable. I chosen to call the police and tell them everything. They came out to examine, and I gave them all the data that I seen. I didn't truly know what else to do. They said they would see into it, and after that, I never listened anything more. I too never saw the lady once more. It still creeps me out when I think almost it. Clearly, I do not work at Walgreens anymore, and haven't for numerous a long time. I moreover do not live in that flat, or indeed the same city any longer. I still ponder what that lady was doing in spite of the fact that I utilized to work in a small comfort store within the city. It wasn't very downtown, but was lovely close. There would be parts of individuals strolling down the walkway amid the day, and at night there would still be a conventional sum of individuals out, particularly after the bars closed adjacent. So our store was open 24 hours. It was beautiful little, but stacked with all sorts of snacks and drinks and things like that. There were probably 5 paths, and after that I would be behind the counter at the distant conclusion of the store closed the entryways. I worked at the shop for a few months, and usually worked overnights. In some cases it would be beautiful busy, and other times it would be really quiet. You never truly knew, and it depended on a parcel of things. But between the hours of 3 o'clock a.m. and 5 o'clock a.m., they were generally the calmest. So one time I was working, and I was by myself on a commonplace night. It was a small bit after 3 o'clock a.m., and the store was purge. Sometimes I would see out the window to the road, and it appeared dead calm. I was fair sitting there behind the counter going on my phone, and lovely before long I listened the entryway open and saw a lady strolling in. She entered the store and strolled down one of the primary passageways. A few minutes went by, and she appeared to fair be shopping around like typical. Inevitably, when she came up to the counter, she put a few things down. When I was beginning to filter them, she told me that she only had $3 and asked me on the off chance that I may grant her a bargain. I do not keep in mind precisely what she was buying, but I keep in mind that it included up to like $15 add up to. I told her that I couldn't do that. Obviously, she would ought to put some items back. I said she would, as it were, be able to induce things that included up to $3. It appeared like common math to me. The lady got irate in spite of the fact that, and said that she wasn't planning to pay for anything. I told her to leave then, and she raged out of the store in outrage. Each presently and after, that clients would be inconsiderate or attempt to induce free stuff. I cruel, being in a city within the centre of the night, all sorts of individuals would come in. I was to some degree utilised to less than perfect clients, and thought that I knew how to bargain with them. Likely 20 or 30 minutes went by. No more clients came in amid that time. At that point, the entryway opened, and I saw the lady come back, but behind her was a man. This fellow was like 6'5", had long stringy hair and a goatee. I'm accepting he was the woman's spouse or boyfriend. He strolled right up to me looking all irate, and after that charged me of being discourteous to the lady. I do not keep in mind what her title was, but the fellow began reviling me out and didn't truly provide me any chance to conversation. I might scent the liquor on his breath as he verbally tore into me. The lady was fair, standing back a couple of feet, and including in some words of insuperable here and there to me. I remember that after them hollering at me for like a minute straight, the man needed to take it outside with me. I told them both to urge out of my store sometime recently. I called the cops. That's when the fellow abruptly pushed me in reverse from over the counter. I wasn't prepared for it, and to be genuine, he was a solid fella. I fell back, and it thumped me over. When I got up, I saw the man was right up at the counter needing to battle me. I moved over to the correct, and we had a caution back there, which I pulled. It was a really uproarious caution, and the sound filled the whole store. It was too super irritating, and the fellow at that point supported absent from the counter and gotten a few irregular things off the rack and tossed them. He at that point thumped over a stand of drinks and went into an path and gotten a few more things off the racks. He stuffed them in his pockets, and the lady at the same time gotten a few stuff with him. Then they both cleared out, taking a bunch of random things. I called the police, and they got there a few minutes afterward. The man and lady were long gone in spite of the fact that. The only thing I might do was provide a depiction and my account of what happened. Fortunately, not one or the other of them came back whereas I was working.